My dear students, welcome to the Design Thinking web session part 2. Hope you are all doing well. Hope you are maintaining a good health and social distancing. In the last session, we discussed about why you need to read Design Thinking in Engineering curriculum. In this particular session, we are going to discuss about what exactly is the design thinking, what are the general principles covered by the design thinking, and what are the basic phases involved in the design thinking. In order to explain this design thinking concept, let me take the contemporary issue, which is the corona COVID-19 pandemic, which we are all suffering with. As you all know that the whole world is suffering with this COVID-19 pandemic. Though it started as a basic medical issue of one part of the geography, today it has become a more of a political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and a legal issue. As we are talking on 26th March 2020, more than 4,94,000 people affected with this disease. 22,000 people died, and out of 195 countries, more than 175 countries affected with this pandemic. You'd be wondering why I'm talking about COVID-19 pandemic in the context of design thinking. Combating COVID-19 itself becomes the most complicated design thinking case study which can be dealt with. Now, what I'm going to do now is I would actually state few general principles of design thinking and try to relate and map to the current contemporary issue which we are talking about. Any design thinking is expecting following general principles. The first one is it should have an unclear problem definition. The problem definition should be completely fuzzy. The front end should be completely fuzzy. For example, if you take the coronavirus itself, early recognition of this particular problem, isolation, and patient care and recovery itself is a completely vague problem definition for the experts. The second general principle of design thinking is it requires a breakthrough ideas. I'm sure you'd agree with me. To combat this particular problem, it requires a multiple breakthrough ideas. It's not just single one. The third general principle of design thinking is it should go in a human-centered approach. No doubt, the current way of a strategy implemented by various countries is going through the highly human-centric approach. And you must be experiencing that as well. The fourth general principle of design thinking is the solution impact should be very big. It should give a huge social impact or a huge economic impact or combination of many other aspects. I'm sure if you could able to solve this problem, entire virus problem, probably I think it is going to be the world's largest, biggest social impact, and it is going to give a huge economic impact. It is going to give a huge political impact. I'm sure it would actually bring multi-dimensional impact on various parameters. And the fourth general principle of this particular design thinking is while you are defining the problem or while you are solving the problem, it should go through a multiple iterations. For example, if you take our contemporary issue now, so while identification itself, we started with a Janta curfew recently. Later, we thought of, we went back and we looked at a little feedback and we went back and we started with the 1 week lockdown. Today, we are actually going with a 21 days lockdown. So it is going through a multiple iterations. So first iteration, we are taking little feedback and going back and bringing the strategy, again coming back and implementing it. So the basic principle of design thinking is it should go through a multiple iterations. So you need to underline this concept of multiple iterations. The next important general principle of design thinking is it requires a lot of collaboration and there should be a systematic approach to solve this problem. I'm sure you would all agree with me that multiple departments, so many volunteering groups are actually collaboratively working to combat this particular issue, and they are going through a very systematic process. So it qualifies as the complex design thinking problem. The next important element of design thinking is there should not be any big bang approach. There should not be any one single go approach. I'm sure you would all agree with me in this particular problem. We are definitely not going through a big bang approach. We are going through in multiple iterations. Once you understand these basic principles of design thinking, the next step is to understand what are the basic common phases involved in design thinking. The first phase of the design thinking in general is called as a discover phase. In this particular phase, we generally collect a lot of data points. We do a lot of surveys. We collect the data, we analyze the data, we synthesize the data, and we bring some kind of insights. We call in the design thinking concept, we call them as a customer insights. For example, in our case, in the corona case which we are talking about, while dealing this particular problem, we collected a lot of data samples. We conducted a lot of surveys. After collecting this data and after these survey reports and so on, so a lot of analysis, a lot of synthesis has been gone through. And finally, we are coming with some kind of useful data insights, some kind of people insights, some kind of customer insights. So when we are collecting the data and analyzing, this whole phase is called as a discover phase. Once we are comfortable with the discover phase, then we would move to the next phase, which is called as a define phase. In the define phase, what we generally do is we already collected some insights. So those insights would be nailed down to few problem statements, not so many problem statements, but we nailed down to very important few problem statements. I'm sure even in this corona case, a lot of data might have actually driven us to nail down to a few problem statements. For example, if people coming from this particular geography is actually giving a lot of effect. At this particular temperature, it is giving a huge impact. Or this particular location is more problem centric. Likewise, we would actually come up with a few data points which are called as a problem statements. Not every insight is useful, but definitely a few insights are going to be helpful to go further into the next phase. The third phase is called as a create phase. At this point of time, we will take some decisions in terms of creating some kind of prototypes and try to see, validate them and come back and again do a little modifications to the prototypes and so on. For example, in this corona case, I'm sure as part of this testing phase, we developed certain prototypes, the test kits, COVID test kits, which in this particular case, and we started testing on particular set of people and see the results and going back and revising our test kits and again going and implementing. So this will go in a basic iteration. So this particular phase is called create phase. However, in this particular phase, there are three other important principles which are needs to be qualified for this particular phase. The three important principles are: the first one is there should be a desirability, the second one is there should be a feasibility, the third aspect is there should be a viability. So let's look at these three parameters in the corona case. The basic desirability is very much required in order to make this prototype successful. For example, we created this COVID test kit, which has to be tested on a humans. The human has to have that kind of desire to get tested. So otherwise, the basic product itself will be failed. That is the step one. Once the desirability is been fulfilled, the second aspect is to go for a feasibility. The technology which we develop or the process which we adopt should be feasible to implement. If it is a very cumbersome or a complex process or the complex technology, probably I think it would not match into the particular concept. The third element is called viability. It is called a economic viability or a business viability. Suppose if this test kits cost around more than 10,000 rupees, probably it is not viable to implement for every sample, right? So it should be economical, it should be viable, it should be sustainable as well. So these three basic principles are very much important while developing the prototype. Once we are comfortable complying to these three basic principles, then we will move to the final phase called evaluate phase. Once this stabilized product is being developed, we'll go back to the market and see the feedback from the customer or the people or the whoever is the users. So this is the important phase, and once we are successful in this particular phase, then the final product would be evolved out. These are the four basic phases involved in design thinking. The first one is called discover, the second one is called define, the third one is called create, and the fourth one is called evaluate. If you are comfortable with the basic terminology which we just now discussed and the general principles we talked about in the beginning, or the four phases just now we talked about, probably I think we made a good headway in understanding the design thinking. Thank you so much for patience listening. In this session, we grabbed basic terminology of the design thinking. What are the general principles involved in the design thinking? What are the basic phases involved in the design thinking? In the next session, definitely we are going to discuss in detail about what exactly is the design thinking and what are the different aspects involved in the design thinking. Probably I think we'll go little deeper of what we discussed today in my next session. Please stay tuned. I'll come back with more insights into design thinking in my next session. Thank you so much.